Hey Josh, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty well, Elliot. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Just another wonderful June day here in the thick of summer.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was finding myself complaining a bit too much about the weather, and I told Lori this morning, I said, you know what? I'm going to make a very conscious effort to not complain about the upcoming heat wave and the humidity that we're currently enduring here. I feel like it's too early in the season, but I'm already complaining way more than I should be, and it's not healthy.
That first world retiree problems.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want to be able to get out and take a walk or a hike or ride your bike. And I mean, I can do all those things, but I'm going to be a sloppy mess by the time I'm finished.
Yeah, it is certainly getting St. Louis swampy, as I would say. But your comment about doing all the things makes me think of. I know we're headed out to Colorado for Camp Fi here shortly, and you had asked me about hiking the Manitoba Incline. So I did approach the subject with my physical therapist today.
Oh,
So
yeah?
we're where they didn't give me an answer one way or the other today. They said they'll ramp up activity and give me an assessment here in a couple of
Oh,
weeks.
interesting. Hmm. And so it's Manitou Incline, actually, is the. You don't want to give the physical therapist the
Yeah, right.
wrong destination. I don't know
No,
if the other one
yes, the
exists or not.
Manitou Incline. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, Manitoba. That sounds like is that
I think
Canada?
so. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's little off the radar from where we'll be.
Yeah. And speaking of Camp Fi, I got the email just a little while ago on that and all the information that's associated with that. I'm skimming through it and I'm thinking to myself, man, this email is very long. I mean, it's excellent that Stephen puts in all the effort to give all the information. He's been doing this for a long time. Obviously, he knows what's going to be the most frequently asked questions, and I'm sure he has a template, but I was like, man, I can't read all this stuff. And it reminded me of when you were saying that, oh, we're going to be doing these things when we're in Colorado. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And it turns out I probably did the exact same thing. I just kind of scanned through a couple of things and I'm like, reading is hard.
Yeah, that TLDR
Yes.
is very important, you know. Yes, to harken back to my super nerdy younger days of when I played Magic the Gathering, I had card sleeves that said RTFC, which stood for read the effing card. Because it's the same thing. There's a lot of legalese, long text, and reading is
Mm-hmm.
difficult.
Yeah. And especially for stuff that's not that important, or a lot of times what I do is I think, I'll get back to this later. And I have emails in my inbox that are, I've kind of glanced at. And I'm like, I'll just take a look at this later. And it's bitten me several times because a lot of times it's like something's coming up for renewal or a credit card is coming up or something like that. And I'm like, I'll get back to that later. And I don't.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's actually probably a great segue into our topic today of college expenses and college planning. Something that you don't want to just hit the snooze on in your email and not think about. And obviously, we're both fathers, and you've gone through this experience where I have not, but obviously two different ends of the spectrum. So I think it'll be a good conversation today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And in hindsight, like you said, I can just offer my perspective and discuss what I did and maybe would have done differently, if anything. And yeah, you can share with us what you guys are doing for your kids as they're still very young and many years away from college.
That's right. Well, I will say that to prep myself for this topic, Dawn, my wife, actually sent me a podcast episode from Inside Out Money with Maggie recently, where I think it was Maggie, and I'm going to butcher who the co host was, maybe Andrew. I know she has a rotating cast over there, but they each kind of gave their perspective. And so if I were to summarize it real quickly, it's a great episode if you want to go over there and take a listen. But it was Maggie seemed to be a little bit more on the side of hey, I don't want to oversave too much in a 529 because of some of the reasons that it restricts what the money can be spent upon. Whereas Andrew, I think, certainly had some deeper funding. And so they talked a little bit about their rationale on why done what they've done, as well as some of the ways that the money can be accessed if ultimately you need to use it.
I actually did listen to that episode a couple of weeks ago, and you just reminded me of it. And I know, remember a couple of takeaways that I had was that I could not believe it was actually mind blowing the amount of money that they had talked about that they had saved. I think Andrew said something like $600,000, which I was like, and his kids are still a few years away from college age, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's something that's not even, I guess it doesn't even feel real to me as far as the ability to save that much money for your kids' education through 529. I don't, that probably was something that would have been accessible, but we didn't go that route.
Yeah. No, I we have not gone that direction either. And I think if I look at even the dichotomy of opinions just from Maggie and Andrew, I really fall into the camp of I would rather have more flexibility, so I don't want to oversave in a 529 per se, because while there are plenty of uses for that money, whether it is you can turn around, you can spend it on housing costs, you can spend it on technology costs, you can spend it on high school, you can do it on grad school, you can pass it on to heirs or move it to other recipients, all kinds of different things. And even more recently, the 35K that can be moved into a Roth for that recipient. I just think, yeah, the danger of over saving in my eyes can outweigh the benefit in some ways.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's kind of one of the things that I always had in the back of my mind, or maybe it wasn't even the front of my mind back in the days whenever we got to a point where we were maybe more financially stable, where we could contribute to something. I thought, what happens if my kids decide they don't want to go to college? And maybe at that time it wasn't quite as flexible as it is now with some of the things you just mentioned, but that was always my fear, and what kept us from investing in a 529 was that was our concern. And we it turned out that only, well, one went through and earned a degree, and two went to college for a period of time but didn't earn a degree, and then one didn't go to college at all. So it was kind of a mixed bag about of what the kids wanted to do after high school.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's certainly a consideration for us as well is we Don and I have thought about just giving a gift, whether that be used for, let's say, college, house, a wedding, whatever expense that it is, but um, still framing it in a way is you can use this money how you see fit, but broadly not trying to be too restrictive about what it could be used for.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, like, even in my own example, I got some scholarship money going to school. Like, my brother got a full ride to school. So, like, I, I try and put that in perspective of, let's say I were able to snap my fingers and I'm retired today. I would hope that I'm involved enough in my child's upbringing that we're emphasizing the importance of education, that there are so many scholarships available today that you can you can leverage that in a informed fashion to try and make these costs more affordable. You know, the age of AI, who knows if college will even be the typical path. I mean, we've certainly talked about that in other episodes as well. And even we know the demand in what are typically associated as blue collar jobs I think in a lot of ways outpaces what the demand is in white collar jobs these days.
Well, and you mentioned scholarships, and I would even add there's just so much variation or variability to how you can go about the college quote unquote experience. And that, so for my kids, we were at a point where we weren't really financially able to contribute to their education until we really didn't reach a point where we were, I guess, stable and had a positive net worth until the older two were already in junior high and approaching high school. The younger two were still kind of in middle school, but still not. It wasn't like they were babies, and we were at a point where we were able to build a significant nest egg towards their future education. So we didn't have a whole lot of time on our side. So what we did though is we emphasized things that were within their control. So in the state of Missouri where we are, there's the A+ scholarship that we really push for. It's really minimal requirements to receive that, and what you ultimately get is 2 years worth of free college tuition at a community college level of your choice. And three of them took advantage of that and went through the program in high school. The other things that we pushed for was, could you earn college credits in high school? And a couple of them earned, I think my middle son earned like 9 credits in high school that he was able to transfer into not taking some of those core classes like English, and I can't remember what the other ones were, but we started pushing for that kind of thing, and then really just trying to share what options were available for them if they and they were at a stage where I think Lexi, our oldest, she was the only one that was really had an idea of what she wanted to do from a career standpoint. The boys were like, yeah, I don't really know. I don't really want to go to school, but I will. And ultimately, they didn't stick around for very long in college, but it was a benefit that they were still able to go to college tuition free. And then what we chose to do is we said, we'll cover the books and fees and all of those sorts of things, and essentially living expenses because they were living at home for a period of time. And then, there was other opportunities that we encouraged them to pursue as well. Like if they were to get a job like I did whenever I was around 21, 22 years old, that offered tuition reimbursement, that's another way to fund your college, and you don't quite get the same experience, but you get the education piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know that for Don and I, we had very different experiences. I was fortunate enough to, and privileged enough that my parents basically took care of almost all of my expenses. And so that was a tremendous benefit to me to be able to graduate college um, with very little debt. You know, how great of a superpower is that to basically be starting the world in the black. I mean, we talk about in this community so frequently of, getting back to broke or whatever, and I don't think you really appreciate that when you're in your 20s of, yeah, hey, this is a massive decision that you're making, and you know like in that podcast episode, they were referring to, I think it was Boston College, and it was like, I don't even remember what the tuition was, but let's say it was 60K or something like that per year. And like that's an astronomical cost when you think about that. And so even at and I don't know what a typical, student loan rate is these days in the days of increasing rates and everything else. But the fact that even when I went through school, I think a typical student loan rate could range from like 3 to, let's say, 8%. I can only imagine that it's higher today. And so imagining that even 250,000 at 8%, I mean, that's a significant payment that you're signing up for just to go to, I mean, and that's even just assuming that you're going to either a state university, either an in-state, and that's not going out of state for a state university or going to a private school, the costs just increase and increase. So, I was really lucky and fortunate that my parents put me in that position, and so I feel kind of the need and desire to want to push that benefit onto my children. I would say that Dawn had a different experience where she really had to take out loans and pay for school herself. And I think that there is benefit to that as well, is that, you have skin in the game. You understand that it's important that what, you're paying for is ultimately you're paying for it. So if you're not seeing value, you're going to change your behavior. You're going to say, "Oh, hey, I'm going to stop spending money on something that I'm not seeing the value for." So, like you said, it's a tremendous benefit to have programs like the A Plus program where you can really that upfront cost to even say, "Hey, I went to a in-state public school, and at the time it was like I think $10,000 a year." But even if you were to cut that in half and say, "Oh, well, now I can get 2 years for the cost of one," that's a huge benefit. And nobody is looking on a job application that, "Oh, you did your first 2 years at, a community college and then you transferred to whatever school." I mean, nobody's looking at that. Nobody cares about that. And you only understand that with the benefit of hindsight as you grow older. Is it even makes less difference, I think, about the name on the piece of paper as much as it is, all right, demonstrate to me what you actually know. So,
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think we both probably have a certain amount of bias because of the directions that we came from. And I did spend a little bit of time away at college. I went to an in-state college university for a very short period of time, but I lived on campus and was able to experience all the things. And I would say that in my experience, that the education that I received at the community college level compared to what I received at that university at that time was significantly greater at the community college level. Just closer in proximity to the professor, to the teachers, smaller class sizes. And the only thing that I would say was the better opportunity was the experience, the life outside of the classroom. And I mean, a lot of times that's what you're, in my opinion, that's what you're paying for these days. You're not necessarily paying for the education, you're paying for the experience. And and of course, it depends on what kind of degree that you're you're going for. I mean, a lot of schools are specialized, and but if you're going for something that's pretty much available at anywhere really, like education or business, things that are readily accessible from an education standpoint. I mean, you can hack the heck out of that and be able to get it at a significantly reduced cost than to send your child to an in-state or out-of-state school and pay, like you said, hundreds of thousands of dollars for something. And then the return on investment, of course, isn't there necessarily. Maybe business, you could argue that it is, but for education, probably not.
right. Yeah, and I know that was a point that got brought up in the Inside Out Money as well, and I'll continue down their path. I won't name a school or anything else like that, but yeah, if you were going to go to some high-priced institution and ultimately your return on investment, your expected pay upon receiving that degree is, you know, much smaller than the cost. Like, is it actually make sense for you to go to that institution for that degree? Like, you're shaking your head no. I would agree with you. Yeah, so I mean, I was pretty pragmatic about my own experience. Is yeah, like I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I didn't never change my major. I was pretty set in that path, but I would say I'm the strange one in this situation. Is like I wonder, I don't have the statistics offhand of how many kids change their major once in college, but I imagine it's not a insignificant number. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and belittle that there isn't experience, like isn't value in the experience, but you also have to put a reasonable dollar value on that. Is sure. I mean, like having a D1, sports program may be fun on the weekends, but at the end of the day, is it going to change your paycheck when you get out of there? Who knows? And it was a very interesting thing that they also brought up was the concept of grad school, and really what you're paying for in something like a grad school is at the very top end of those schools, or like what are you trying to actually accomplish? Like, if I know that they used investment banking as an example, so if you're trying to be an investment banker, yeah, you may have to be at one of these particular institutions to go land that high level corporate job that you're trying to go look for. If that's really what your goals are, okay, like that may make sense, but you got to make sure that the individual that you're putting this investment into is aligned with that, not just like, your own feelings of the matter of your own kids and everything else.
And it's interesting that in this community, I guess I'll back up a little bit and say, our kids are not necessarily a direct reflection of us. You and I had a conversation before we hit record here today about the choices that our kids make against our best wishes. But I would say that it's interesting that we work towards trying to create the ultimate lifestyle for ourselves and what we want our, we want essentially to achieve freedom, but yet we're, in a lot of cases, maybe not you and I, but within the community, we also hear like we're trying to save and be able to afford for this luxurious item. Maybe that's a poor choice of words, but to be able to provide our kids with this college experience so that we can set them up for success to be able to get out into the workforce. I mean, ultimately, isn't that what education is for? It's for you to get out into the workforce so that you can continue to live the American dream at the potentially like a higher level than someone without a college degree can. And it's just kind of interesting that you and I are trying to get out of the rat race as quickly as possible, and a lot of people in this community are, but yet we're like kind of feeding and pointing our children to go follow in that same path. Which as you and I sit here, we're like, I didn't really want to be on that path, and I tried to get off of it as quickly as possible, and I did, and we both are heading in that direction, but it's just kind of like almost opposing. I don't know. It's interesting that we make that choice for our kids, even though it may not have been the best choice for us.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and that's an interesting point because I mean, obviously we're at differing points in our lives. Obviously, my kids, none of them have gone through school, so it is trying to understand, like what am I trying to drive them towards? I I would hope that by the time, they leave to make whatever decision that they do make in the future, that they feel empowered to make a decision that suits them well, while also being armed with the knowledge of, hey, if you make some very intentional choices, you can live a life that everybody else wants to live, and you can do it much sooner than is typical. I mean, I think that should always be, what's the most important thing that you can buy with money. I think that everybody in this space would say is your time and your freedom to, you can't, no matter how much money you have in this world, you can't buy more time. So if you can turn around and essentially buy time by buying your freedom, then you've spent your money well.
I like your approach of saying I'm going to give a gift and then throughout, I don't know at what point you intend to tell them about this gift, but you could certainly use it as an opportunity to say, okay, here's different things you can do with it. Like you said earlier, I mean, it could go towards education, it could go towards wedding, it could go towards a brokerage account, and they could
Yep.
potentially really be set up, because you could introduce all the opportunities that they have for ways that they can go get an education that don't have to necessarily use that money, or maybe they just use a small portion of it or whatever, however that looks. That's certainly, I feel like a smarter approach to take than to put all your eggs in one basket.
It is very interesting to see where I mean, I guess the generation, like Generation X or whatever the next generation, I don't even know if my kids are technically Generation X or not. What am I
Like Z
saying?
or something, right?
Gen
Yeah.
Z. Yeah, Gen Z, right? When Gen Z started, when Gen Z ends, whatever. At what point is there going to be any sort of inflection point where the we've talked about the American dream, the standard path of just kind of going to college is no longer going to be the de facto path. Is that coming? Like the unaffordability of college to the general populace. And I'm not here to stand up on a pulpit saying, yeah, like teachers are overpaid or institutions aren't worthwhile or anything else like that. Like obviously I've done quite well for myself due to the system. However, there's so many different resources that low cost, no cost that just didn't exist when we were kids, at that same time. And so you look at even the titans of different companies now. You look at a Zuckerberg, you look at, insert random name. What do a lot of them have in common? College
Yeah.
dropouts, or the fact that they didn't go to a traditional, go down the traditional path. Is they had a desire and passion for learning, and they went and started doing shit. I mean, like, pardon my French, but I mean that's the same thing that we say about Phi of just you have to take action. Those are the qualities that if you can instill that in a child, I think that's going to be the greatest measure of success is the fact that you have the grit and the determination to continue to go work and do something.
Or even the ability to instill the dreamer mentality or the imagination, because we've talked about my son Caleb a couple of times on the show here, and he's like, I don't know what word to use as far as like where he fits from a in a financial situation, but I'm telling you, it's not quite where I think he would love to be as far as the amount of money that he makes, but he's living a great life and currently living in just outside of Glacier National Park in Montana. He was home this past weekend, and he's just on and on and on talking so highly about what he's doing. Now he's a raft guide, taking families down the river, whitewater rafting. Like it's just a dream scenario for him. He's a college dropout, essentially, and he's experimented with a couple of different career fields, and now he's found himself into a situation where he's like, kind of almost like a lifestyle job, if you will, where he's able to just pick up these types of jobs across the country and move to wherever they're available and get his living expenses at a fraction of the cost of traditional situation. And I mean, it suits him. And 5 years ago, I would have never imagined that would have been what he would be doing. He was on the path to just the typical American. He was in college and studying to be. He was into like web design and that kind of thing. And he got into a situation where he was able to almost do like a apprenticeship type of program, and he was like, I don't want to do this. He learned very quickly, like sitting at a desk all day is not very fun, even if it is to do something that you thought was creative and all of that sort of thing. So anyway, I went big tangent there, but you just never really know what the kids are going to actually want to do. And I think that's one thing that I give myself a little bit of a pat on the back that Lori and I had the mindset of we put on our own oxygen masks first because we both came from a situation where our financial backgrounds were a mess in our 30s or 20s rather, and then as we got into our 30s we woke up a little bit. Our kids were a little older and we got together and said we want to make better choices for our lives. How can we put ourselves in a better situation, and learned about money and investing and all of that sort of thing, and took care of ourselves first. And now we're at the point where if our kids do need our assistance, we're available to help them with things, but we encourage them to make kind of follow their own path. And that's looked different for all of them.
You're telling me that I'm not going to be able to treat my kids all the same and they're going to just follow the exact same path? You've crushed my
Oh,
world, Josh.
you know that already between the three of them. I can see how different they all are.
But I mean, you're exactly right. Is I know that Doc G kind of uses that parable of three different paths in his book, and yet like that's certainly the example of somebody that has found their passion in life, where it doesn't have to be the passion forever, but it is the passion for right now. And to your point, living a fantastic life, living a life that I think a lot of people would be extremely envious of. Now, to your point, it may not have the same dollar signs that other professions may have, but who cares? Like if you are living an extraordinary life and you're getting your bills paid and you're able to survive and tuck a little away, then hey, you're doing something great, and like don't mess with it.
Yeah.
So
I'll brag on my middle son just for a moment here too. So his name's Eli, and he works for the city that I live in here. I don't know if I told you that before, but he works for the public works department, and he's been there. I don't know, he might be 5 or 6 months in at this point, and he's a college dropout as well, and kind of bounced around between jobs for a while, and then landed this job recently, and it's like so convenient for him. He lives here, he works here. I just passed him earlier today. I was out for a walk around town. He's out with three other guys. There's a joke here, but they're changing light bulbs in the street lights, and I say, how many public works officers does it take to change a light bulb? Because he's just literally standing there.
yeah, I was gonna say, what's he respond to this?
Yeah, he's like, oh, I'm spotting. I'm spotting the guy on the lift.
Safety first, Dad.
Yeah, I said, does he have a strap or like some kind of a harness on as the guy up in the lift? He said, I don't think so. I said, well, what are you going to do if he falls out? You're just going to say, I spotted him falling.
Yeah.
But
that's right.
But I say that to say that it's a great job. It's fitting for his personality. It's something different every day. He's outside, he's inside. It's low stress, has excellent benefits. I mean, similar to the benefits that you have, where it's like everything is paid for. He doesn't have to pay a dime for any of the benefits. Plus, he gets a pension, and if he sticks with it, I mean, I hope he does. That he could certainly be in a position where I think he could retire early as well. But anyway, I mean, there's still great jobs out there for people that don't take the college path.
Yeah. No, it just makes me think of one of my favorite movies is Office Space. Have you seen
Yeah,
Office
of course.
Space? Yeah, yeah. And so just Peter at the end of the movie, of course, is no longer working for Anatrode and is just doing construction.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, loving every minute of it just because it's not toiling away in the office. So I can get behind that.
Well, and you, I mean, I'm in a similar situation, really. I mean, I call myself retired, but I'm still working on these rental properties, and I'm spending my days significantly less hours. I'm working more or less part time now, but I'm dirty as can be, and I'm like crawling around. In this past week, I'm crawling around in an attic wearing, a mask and all kinds of safety gear, trying to avoid putting my arms through insulation or falling through the drywall, like Clark Griswold and in Christmas Vacation,
Christmas Vacation.
trying to
Yeah.
avoid that scene. But and it's like 90 degrees here, like we talked about earlier, and probably another 20 degrees warmer in the attic. But it's like I really enjoy it. I'm taking this old house and making it a lot better than what it was, and I'm not getting paid directly like from my hourly wage. It's an investment over time. But I find myself like enjoying that type of work a whole lot more than sitting at a desk and trying to update spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations and things like that.
And attending those M
Oh
words, right?
God, the meetings. Ugh. Yeah, meetings and emails. I'm so thankful that I don't have to worry about those things anymore. Well, I shouldn't say
That's right.
that. They still both exist in your personal life, but
Well, I'll have to start calling you Peter Man.
yeah. Hey, I had a question going back to your education and your situation. So you mentioned that your brother had a full ride. He's a little bit younger than you, right?
Yep, 4 years
4
younger.
years. Okay. So your parents didn't know that he was going to have a full ride until after you
Nope.
were. So that wouldn't have changed or made any difference to your
Yeah,
education.
see, I mean, I have no idea how finances isn't a topic that I would say that my parents and I have had open discussions about. But yeah, I mean, I gotta imagine that they had money saved up for both my brother and I for school just based off of the really the premium that they put on education throughout our entire lives. So the fact that, yeah, I mean, I got part of my college covered by scholarship and he got the entire thing covered, like, gotta be a good thing for my parents. But yeah, also at the same time is if they had put all this money into a
Yeah.
529, then it's not to say that you can't get at it. Like I think you can at worst just take a 10% penalty and get to it just like you would I would assume a traditional IRA. But yeah, I don't know. It would probably be a Roth IRA, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, yeah.
It went somewhere though, I guess. Or maybe it's just funding their retirement.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, living the good life.
Yeah. So you guys are pretty solid on your decision. You're going to have that money set aside. You're going to be able to give that to your kids when they reach the age of 18, and that's the essentially the direction you think that you're going to take with
So
education.
that's where that's where we get a little fuzzy on what we're actually gonna do. I think if they were to go the path of traditional 4 year institution, I mean we've kind of toyed around with the idea of okay, go ahead, go get loans yourself, so that they kind of have that skin in the game, so to speak. And as long as they take it seriously and, whatever else, we will happily come in at the 11th hour and swoop in and say, hey, here's this sum of money. That is one idea that we've talked about. I think I had heard that from a mutual friend of ours, Mr. Carl from 1500. I think that was generally his plan with his daughters was have them take out the loans, do all the things, and then come in at the last hour and pay for everything. You know, I don't know if that's really the direction we're gonna go or not, but I got at least over a decade to figure it out, at least.
And I think there would be value. I like that direction of being able to say, hey, guess what? We're going to help you out with that. But I mean, I think there would also be value in saying, this is the path that we're choosing to take for you. You can then make maybe it's like a collective decision of how they will spend that money. I don't know, just I'm just thinking out loud here is like if
Yeah,
they're in their teenage years, you're starting to talk about that as you're talking about college. Hey, we're going to take a different path than just being able to say your college is paid for. Instead, we're saying, hey, here's how much money we have set aside for each of you to make a choice of what you would like to do with it.
right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that that's very fair. Is I think at some point we will probably disclose to them, like, hey, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it. We're not just saying, yeah, hey, we're covering all of your college, so who cares if you go to some place that costs 100 grand a year or some place that costs 10 grand a year? Like there's a vast difference there, and so the fact that we're trying to give the same amount to every child allows them to your own point, a choose your own adventure, so to speak, of, okay, do I see the value in this? Then, okay, I feel good about making that informed decision, or no, I really don't see the value in this, so maybe I'll go a different way. But, the other piece of that is I don't think that we want to necessarily negatively change a decision point. Like let's say that maybe they do have aspirations of going to a 4-year institution, and then we were to say, oh yeah, we've got this pile of money set aside for you, and they're like, oh, actually, I think I'm gonna just go buy a house
Yeah.
and I'll just kind of go do my own thing. you know Hopefully we've educated in the way that we want to by that point. But yeah, I don't know, it'll be probably a game time decision more than anything else.
Yeah, I think one of the things, so kind of in a similar situation where we're thinking through, okay, if we want it, going back to like the die with zero mentality, if we want to leave or give an inheritance to our kids now or in the not too distant future whenever they need it the most, we've talked about that a little bit where we were like, we could we could gift them a decent amount of money that would be meaningful for them now as opposed to when they're 60 or whatever. But we're struggling with what would they choose to do with it. All of them are in their 20s now and all on different paths, and there's no marriages on the immediate horizon. I mean, I don't know that there will be anytime soon, so like that's not even something that we're thinking about or it's on the radar. But they're like, if we were to give, if we were to have taken a step back and said, okay, when they're 25, we're going to give them X amount of dollars, like it probably wouldn't have gone so well for a couple of them, one of them at least.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think there is some of that same trepidation in our eyes of, like, I know how I was
Yeah.
when I was in my mid 20s. That probably wouldn't have been a great decision for me either. So, you know, to some extent, I want to incentivize them to do something that I think is the right decision, but at the same time, not penalize them for making that right decision, right? Of, like, okay, if you did go to a 4-year institution, you want to go be an engineer, like, I will happily go pay for your school, like, within reason. Like, maybe it makes sense to go to our state school here that has a very good reputation, but if you want to go to, some private school that costs 8 times as much, like, then maybe I will say, like, yeah, hey, you've got this budget to basically go spend. Choose to spend it how you will, but that's kind of the confines of what we're doing. But at the same time, you know, we're not directly trying to force going to college or anything else like that. So to your point, if it didn't seem like the right time to give a gift at that exact moment, I think we would delay it. and still give the gift and not penalize them for not accepting it at the same time that we probably would. So continue to extract what that growth would be
Hmm.
until that time that we eventually give it to them. I don't know.
Yeah, time will tell.
Yeah, problem for future Elliot
Right.
and Don.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out if we're still having this podcast 10,
That's right.
12 years
Yeah,
from now.
no pressure.
Right. Well, anything
Yes,
else on this topic?
I don't think so.
All right.
It's been a good one.
Yeah. We'll probably revisit it
Well,
from time to time, I would imagine.
yes, I believe that most certainly. I would say that's probably right behind the big three. If you're a parent, this is probably the next most important decision kind of in your life or large expense that you're kind of talking about
Yeah.
is college expenses. So it's certainly up there.
Yep. All right, sir.
Until next time.
Yep. Good conversation.
See ya.
See ya.
You too.